Despite what I've said about this movie in the last two reviews, I actually don't think it's as bad as people make it out to be. Now granted, it's not great, it's probably a bottom 5 if not bottom 3 MCU movie, but it's not terrible. Much like The Incredible Hulk though, it is a lesser MCU movie, and because of the high quality of the rest of the franchise, Iron Man 2 does not get looked at in a very good light. This movie unfortunately suffered from the same problem that a lot of sequels suffer from. It failed to capture the same magic of the first movie. But what exactly was the reason for this? Was it the villains? Maybe. Mickey Rourke kind of came off as ridiculous as Whiplash, and Justin Hammer, well, yeah, he was just annoying. They didn't really pack the same villainous, spiteful punch that Obadiah did from the first movie, and it definitely hurt the overall plot. And the overall plot was a problem too. I mean, compared to the first movie that felt so fresh and new, this just felt kind of bland and uninspired. I think maybe the big problem was instead of treating it as a big Iron Man story, they treated it more as a transition movie to get us closer to the Avengers. Not to mention you could argue this was rushed out. I mean, we're 3 movies into the MCU and 2 of them were Iron Man. I know the first movie was incredibly successful, but you could have maybe waited a little bit on this. Just maybe. Regardless of what I think though, they didn't wait, which is why today we're going to be taking a look back at Iron Man 2. So this movie doesn't start after the events of Iron Man. In fact, it starts during the events of the first movie. A dying old Russian man named Anton Vanko is sitting on his couch watching Tony Stark's press conference. After Tony reveals himself as Iron Man, Anton calls his son Ivan to come to him. Anton apologizes to his son for not being able to give him more before dying, just immediately. We're like 2 minutes into the movie, and somebody's already dead. Ivan is obviously very distraught about this, and we get a preview to how good Mickey Rourke's acting is going to be in this movie. Ivan then finds the designs for the original arc reactor, which was created to Anton Vanko and Tony's father Howard Stark. While Ivan is working on it, we get a little bit of a time lapse, showing Tony's ever-growing popularity as Iron Man. Ivan finally completes his design and title card. The movie then immediately jumps ahead to 6 months later. Worth noting, by the way, that now this movie takes place simultaneously with The Incredible Hulk, which you talked about previously, and Thor, which we'll talk about next. Anyway, cut to Tony jumping out of a plane as Iron Man and landing at the Stark Expo, which he's brought back for the first time since the 70s to honor the memory of his father. After giving a rousing speech, Tony decides to air an old video clip of his dad introducing the expo. While he does that, it gives him an excuse to check how toxic his blood is? Okay, that's pretty weird. Oh, turns out his blood is 19% toxic. That doesn't sound very good. Whatever, I'm sure it's nothing. Anyway, Tony leaves the expo and finds a hot redhead sitting by his car. Unfortunately for Tony, she's not here for boning. She's here to serve him a subpoena to appear in front of the US Supreme Court tomorrow. Tony goes to this because, well, he kinda has to, and he's met by a committee led by Senator Stern, who wants him to turn over the Iron Man suit to the government. Tony refuses this, however, because, well, he built it and it's his property. We are then introduced to resident cringe lord Justin Hammer, who is the new weapons developer for the government. After he gives a cringy speech about cringe things, we're introduced to James Rhodes. Wait a minute, that's not James Rhodes. Oh yes it is! It's the new Rhodey. It's Don Cheadle. It's Captain Planet, motherfucker! Rhodes tries to defend his friend, but they make him show some images showing places across the world where they're trying to build other Iron Man suits. Tony hacks into their system though and shows footage of all these other places, including Hammer, unsuccessfully trying to replicate it. Tony wins the day by making the point that it might be up to 20 years before anyone has this technology, and that he has successfully brought world peace. Ivan, meanwhile, is watching this from his home, and he completes designs on a suit of his own. Back in Malibu, meanwhile, Tony's condition is getting much worse. Turns out, ironically, that the palladium core in the arc reactor that's keeping him alive is also slowly killing him. Tony's then interrupted by Pepper Potts, and they have some more sexual tension-infused drama. Pepper has a lot that she needs Tony to deal with, and not really wanting to deal with any of it, Tony decides to make her the new CEO of Stark Industries. Pepper happily accepts the job, which I'm sure won't completely destroy her mentally. Ivan, meanwhile, receives a fake ID, a fake passport, and tickets to a Grand Prix in Monaco. Don't know why you need that, but whatever floats your boat, dude. I guess maybe he just likes car racing. Tony is now boxing with Happy, and we get introduced for the first time to Scarlett Johansson. She introduces herself as Natalie Rushman, and quickly displays an impressive background, as well as impressive fighting skills. After Tony officially makes Pepper the new CEO, he decides to hire Rushman as his new personal assistant. Meanwhile, the whole gang decides to go to a Grand Prix in Monaco. Why do I feel like I've heard that before? They mingle with the guests and run into Elon Musk, of all fucking people. They eventually run into resident douchebag Justin Hammer, as well as Christine Everhart, the reporter who Tony banged in the first movie. Hammer tries to use Everhart to get some dirt on and embarrass Tony, but it doesn't go well for him. Spoiler alert, Nothing in this movie goes well for Justin Hammer. Tony goes to the bathroom to check his blood levels, and turns out the toxicity is at 53%. So yeah, that's really not good. Sensing he's gonna die soon, Tony says, screw it, I'm just gonna drive my own race car. Screw it, it's just one race, not like anything's gonna go bad. Oh hey look, there's a cleanup crew. Oh god. Well kids, Ivan's here, and looks like he's suicidal. Mickey Rourke strips naked, which is the last thing I wanted to see, and pulls out his whiplash gear. Ivan decides to display his dominance by completely taking out a race car. Meanwhile, Pepper and Happy, who have the Iron Man case, decide to drive the wrong way on a racetrack, with race cars coming right towards them to get to Tony. Whiplash decides it's big murder hours, but wait, Tony's gone. Oh, there he is. Oh shit, that didn't work. Tony tries to lure him towards a car to blow him up, and he does blow up the car, but he's fine. He's just standing right there. Luckily, Happy is here to commit vehicular manslaughter. The murder is unsuccessful though, as this just pisses Whiplash off. After he destroys most of Happy's car, Pepper finally chucks Tony the Iron Man case. Once in the suit, Tony then very easily dispatches of Whiplash. Like, super easy. Like, it took him a minute. We'll talk about this more later, but therein lies my big problem with this movie. It really didn't build any of the villains to be very credible, but you'll see what I mean a little bit later. As he's being dragged off, Ivan yells, "You lose," at Tony, but he literally just kicked your ass, so not really. Tony, who can apparently speak French, decides to go to the prison to talk to Ivan. Ivan tells Tony of his father, Anton Vanko, who Tony has never heard of, and Ivan also lets Tony know that even though he lost, he actually won, because if you can make God bleed, people will cease to believe in him. Tony decides to leave, but before he goes, Ivan lets him know that he's aware of the palladium poisoning. On the plane ride home, Tony makes Pepper an omelet, well he burns it, but he tried, and tries to convince her to go away on a vacation. She refuses though, as well she's the CEO and she's got shit to do. Meanwhile, at the Legion of Doom, Ivan gets some potatoes. Wait, those don't look like potatoes, that looks like a bomb. He also gets a new cellmate, who has the exact same number as him. That's pretty weird. Ivan takes the guy out, the guard leaves him the key, and he plants the bomb and strolls the hell on out of there. Before he can get out though, he's captured by more guards, who throw him into the back of a van. The van then takes him to the airport hangar of, you guessed it, Captain Cringelord himself, Justin Hammer. Hammer and Ivan then cut a deal for Ivan to produce some suits, so Hammer can upstage Stark. Meanwhile, Tony is doing some research on Anton Vanko, until he's interrupted by Rhodey. Rhodey begins to notice just how incredibly sick Tony is, though, and begins to question if Tony can really protect anybody. Tony begins to prepare for his birthday party, but man, his condition is getting a lot worse. He asks Natalie that, hypothetically, if it were her last birthday party, how would she celebrate it? She says that she would do anything she wanted, which is exactly what Tony decides to do. Tony gets major wasted and starts fucking shit up at his birthday party, which sends Rhodey over the line. Rhodey commandeers the War Machine suit and attempts to subdue Tony. It doesn't work though, and they end up battling all throughout Tony's house, destroying pretty much all of it. Eventually, they both put their hands up and fire their blasts at each other. Rhodey gets the better of it though, and he decides, screw it, I'm just gonna jack the suit. Rhodey takes the suit to make it property of the US military, because that's what the US military does, they steal shit. The next day, Tony decides to have some hangover donuts while still in the Iron Man suit, but oh shit, Sam Jackson and an eye patch is back. Nick Fury reveals to Tony that Natalie Rushman is actually a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent spy named Natasha Romanoff. They also give Tony a lithium dioxide injection to take the edge off a little bit so he can get back to work on finding a cure. Tony tells Fury he's gone through every known element to find a cure, but Fury informs him that he hasn't tried all of them. Back in the land of shitty villains, Ivan has a surprise for Hammer. He's not gonna make suits anymore. He's gonna make some drones. Hammer's not very happy about this, but he decides to go with it anyway. Back at base, Rhodey shows the War Machine suit to the General. He's not so pleased to find out though, the General is calling Hammer down to put more weapons on the War Machine suit, so it can be a centerpiece in his Stark Expo presentation. Back at Tony's house, Nick Fury lets him know some things about his father, including that he was one of the founding members of S.H.I.E.L.D. Nick Fury leaves Tony with a case left behind by his father, which is apparently supposed to hold the answer to all his problems. Back at base, Hammer presents Rhodey with a handful of weapons for the War Machine suit, including a small explosive which he calls the ex-wife. Hammer expected Rhodey to pick one, but Rhodey decides to pick all of it. Back at Tony's place, he watches some old tapes of his dad while looking for his dad's old notebook. Tony gets frustrated at finding nothing, but turns out his father left behind a little message for him. The model city of the future which his father created is apparently the key to unlocking the future, and his father ends by telling Tony that his greatest creation all along was him. Refueled by this, Tony buys some strawberries and decides to go visit Pepper. This doesn't go well though, as she's not really happy to see him, and turns out both Natalie and his driver Happy work for her now. As Tony goes to leave, he realizes that the Stark Expo model is right there in the office, and decides to take it home with him. Unleashing the power of big brain hours, Tony realizes that the little world in the middle of the model can be used to synthesize a new element. Tony begins to get to work on this, and he's interrupted by Agent Coulston. After they use the original Captain America shield to level out his design, Coulson informs Tony that he's leaving and going to New Mexico, which we'll learn a lot about more in the next movie. Tony successfully creates a new element and has Jarvis run some diagnostics on it. Back at the Legion of Doom, Ivan informs Hammer that the drones will not be ready for combat, and instead it can only just make a salute during the presentation. Hammer is very upset about this, takes Ivan's shit, and puts him on lockdown with 2 guards. Turns out Ivan was able to kill those guards really quick though, and he gives Tony a call to let him know that shit's about to go down. Tony then decides, you know what, screw the tests, it's go time. We're now live at the Stark Expo, and Captain Cringelord is here for his presentation. Hammer shows off his brand new Hammer drones, and then brings out the new and improved War Machine. Iron Man arrives though to let Rhodey know that shit's about to go down, but back in Legion of Doom, Ivan is controlling Rhodey as well as the drones. Under Ivan's control, the drones and Rhodey start to chase Tony throughout the city. The rest of the drones stomp through the expo and start taking out civilians. One of them almost kills a young boy, but Tony saves him at the last second. Why did I mention this, by the way? Why is this boy significant? Well, it was revealed very later on that this boy is actually a young Peter Parker. So that's a pretty cool fun fact. While Tony works on destroying the droids and keeping Rhodey alive, Romanoff has Happy drive her to Ivan's location. We then get to see the Black Widow in action for the first time as she takes out all the guards. Well, not all of them. Happy took out one dude. Meanwhile, Tony's finally able to destroy all those drones, but Rhodey tackles them into some sort of botanical gardens looking place. Romanoff bursts into Ivan's room, but shit, he's gone. Romanoff is able to reboot the War Machine suit though, so at least Rhodey has control back. They end up getting surrounded by the remaining drones however, but it's okay, they proceed to destroy them in literally a minute. Like holy shit, they just maul them. Back at the expo, Justin Hammer is arrested. He's very cross about this though, and informs Pepper that she's going to be seeing him again very soon. Also, spoiler alert, we'd never see this angry little douchebag ever again. Iron Man and War Machine's night isn't done though, as it looks like there's one more drone coming. That's not a drone though, it's the new and improved Whiplash. War Machine decides it's time to break out the ex-wife, but considering it was made by Justin Hammer, it doesn't fucking do anything. Whiplash gets the better of them momentarily until they decide to do like earlier and both put their hands up, blasting him in the middle. As he dies, Whiplash once again says, "You lose," and turns out all the drones, including his own suit, have been rigged to explode. They both fly away, but then Tony realizes Pepper might be in danger. He's able to save her just in time, and they land on a roof. Pepper then finally mentally snaps and quits as CEO of Stark Industries. And then, thankfully, 2 fucking movies of sexual tension finally boils over, and they kiss. Oh look, War Machine's there too. Tony's like, hey, can I have my suit back? He's like, lol, nah, and he just jacks it again, because he's a good friend. The next day, Tony meets with Nick Fury about officially joining the Avengers. Turns out while Romanoff recommended Iron Man, she did not recommend that they recruit Tony Stark. What this means is that Fury just wants to use Tony as a consultant. Tony initially refuses as they can't afford him, but he decides to do it for free in exchange for a favor. That favor is that Fury gets Senator Stern to reluctantly present Tony and Rhodey with a medal in front of Washington. And that's how the movie ends, with them waving to the crowd. Just kidding, end credit scene time! Oh look, Agent Coulson made it to New Mexico. But what's he there for? Looks like Agent Coulson has found a familiar hammer, which we'll be talking about in the coming weeks. So what exactly was the problem with this movie? Well, we mentioned the weak villains earlier, so let's start with that. Unlike Obadiah in the first movie, you never really got the feeling that Hammer or even Venko provided a viable threat to Iron Man. I mean, Tony just kind of destroyed him both times, even when he had drones and he was powered up. And if I'm being honest, the acting performances didn't really do it for me either. I don't really like Mickey Rourke as an actor, if I'm being completely honest, and him trying to be a fake Russian was really super cringy. And I gotta say, I didn't like Hammer either, and I began to realize it's not because I didn't like the character, it's that I didn't like Sam Rockwell as an actor in this movie. I haven't really seen him in anything else, so I can't judge him as a whole, but I don't know, his performance was just overly cringe, and he seems like he didn't really know what he was doing or really know the character. I mean, the character in the comics is actually an old man, so I don't know how the hell he became a young douchebag in this. And here's the thing too, I love Don Cheadle as Rhodey. I feel like as a whole he was a better fit than Terrence Howard was, but sometimes there's a feeling out process, a transition period if you will, and this movie kind of felt like that. He hadn't really become the role quite yet, he was still trying to figure it out a little bit. And like I said earlier, this whole movie was kind of a transition. They could have made it its own thing, you know, but they just decided to say, hey screw it, let's just use this movie to just set up the Avengers. I mean, at the end of the day, none of the plot really mattered, did it? I mean, Venko's dead, we never saw Hammer ever again, even though they kind of set up for him to come back, and Tony cured his blood, so I mean, it was as simple as that. None of this ended up really mattering at the end of the day. But was this the worst MCU movie so far? Well, let's find out as we go to our big board now. As of last week, it was pretty simple. Iron Man 1, Incredible Hulk 2, and to be honest, I very much struggled in where to put this. And by struggled, I basically struggled with, is this movie better or worse than The Incredible Hulk? I mean, it suffered from a lot of the same problems. The plots were a little jumbled at points, and at the end of the day, a lot of the events in that didn't really end up mattering in both the movies, and also the villain performances in both movies were kind of poor as well. But because we did get some cool Avengers shit, like seeing Black Widow for the first time, getting introduced to Nick Fury more, we did get some backstory on Tony, we got Don Cheadle for the first time, and Vanko wasn't terrible. So, as a whole, yes, I do think this movie was a little bit better than The Incredible Hulk, so here are the new rankings. Iron Man 1, number 1, a very distant one, this, number 2, and then The Incredible Hulk, number 3. So you're probably thinking, alright, so we had a great movie to start the MCU, then we had 2 movies in the middle. Please tell me we're not gonna get another movie. Well, kinda not really. It's okay. It's an, actually, it might be an movie. It's an okay movie. I don't know. We'll just get to it. But we'll judge it as a whole next week. That is going to do it, ladies and gentlemen, for my MCU look back at Iron Man 2. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Join me every single Saturday for a new look back video. Next Saturday, we're going to be doing our first ever King Kong look back at King Kong 1933. But that is it from me today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll see you guys back in either 2 or 3 weeks for the Thor review. My name is Noah Taff, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.